Hi folks, I am getting ready to do a new set of videos. So this is the first one, and this is not really related to the rest of the videos I'm going to do, but I want to get this one out of the way so that we can talk about it, and I can then start to focus on the new moon in Scorpio. You know that I do my new moon videos after the new moon actually occurs, but this time I might actually end up doing it sooner. So there's going to be this particular video on Saturn going direct, which it did on November the 4th. The timing of this video is less important with regard to it going direct on November the 4th. It's more of a general Saturn retrograde video, but I still want to do it close to that date, just so I can give you a couple of thoughts, and then we can be done with it, and it's there for your reference. And then I'm going to move on to talking about either the new moon in Scorpio first or Venus in Libra first. I'm not sure. I'm still going to noodle on which one I want to do first. I'm tempted to do the new moon in Scorpio just so you have the information, but it's not that dramatically different from what I've been talking about. At the end of the day, let me just say this for the new moon in Scorpio, which is going to occur for me Sunday night, Monday morning, November the 13th, early morning for me here, Pacific time. It's really about the ability to start to take some considered action in the Scorpio part of your chart, whether to support the Uranus transit in Taurus, and to help to continue to make the Taurus part of your chart more authentic, or to protect the Uranus part of the Taurus, so that if there's something coming up from the Scorpio part of the chart to threaten the Taurus part of the chart, action can be taken, and the idea is that the action be well thought through and considered. I mean, that in a nutshell is it. I thought I would share that if there's someone really eager to think it through. And if you're welcome to take a look at the remaining transits in Scorpio video that I did a few days ago, or a couple of weeks ago at this point in time. I'll place a link to it at the end of this video, so you can take a look at that and at least familiarize yourself with the context behind that if you're eager to dive into it. The reason why I'm wondering whether I want to do the Venus and Libra one first is that Venus is one of the dispositors of the Scorpio new moon chart. So there's a part of me that's feeling like, let's just talk about Venus and Libra first, get that out of the way so you have all the context then, and we can talk about the Scorpio New Moon next. After the Scorpio New Moon video, I want to talk about Mercury going into Sagittarius. That video starts to get us to look at transits as we move into early 2024, because Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury will clear Sagittarius, of course, but then in the middle of December, it will go retrograde in Capricorn, and then retrograde back into Sagittarius, and then direct again. So that is a whole other thing that I will talk about. It'll be the first of our videos talking about transits that starts to take us into 2024. Okay, so Saturn going direct to retrograde. So let me just give you this basic information first. Saturn went retrograde on June 17th, I believe, of 2023 at around 7 degrees of Pisces. Do I have that right? I think so. Goodness, I had those dates right here, but of course I don't anymore. Sorry, bear with me, folks. Thank you. I appreciate you. I do. No, really, I do. Goodness me. Why is life annoying? Give me one sec. Yes, June 17th, at around 7 degrees of Pisces. And it has retrograded all the way back to about 0 degrees of Pisces, which it entered in about March, in March of 2023. And it went direct on November the 4th, and it is going to clear the shadow, the retrograde degrees, the 7 degrees of Pisces in February of 2024. So basically, between June 17th and February 2024, Saturn will go over the degrees of roughly 0 degrees of Pisces and 7 degrees of Pisces 3 times. Once direct, once retrograde, and once direct again. I can feel you all tell me that that's wrong, and of course that's wrong. Let's just say that since March, April 2023, it's gone, because March 7th is when Saturn entered Pisces at 0 degrees, somewhere around end March, actually even sooner than that. Let's just say March 2023. March 2023 to June direct, June 17th to November 4th retrograde, November 4th of 2023 through February 2024 direct again. So if you have, this is what I want to share with you at the end of the day. If you have Saturn direct in your birth chart, it is going to be Saturn's direct motion, where you're going to feel Saturn's energy the most strongly. If you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, it is when Saturn is retrograde that you're going to feel Saturn's energy most strongly. And as Saturn prepares to go direct or retrograde, when Saturn is stationary, is when things might escalate or crystallize in such a way that there's something you need to become sensitive to or take action towards or consider. There, that in a nutshell is this video. Saturn spends a fair amount of time by the time you've probably noticed we get to Saturn retrograde and Neptune, Uranus, Pluto retrograde, I really don't talk a lot about those planets going retrograde, as if those planets spend so much time direct retrograde that and sometimes I find that people imbue so much meaning towards. Just know that ultimately what you're looking for when it comes to retrogrades and directs is whether or not the planet going retrograde or direct is retrograde or direct in your chart. And you will likely feel the planet's influence more clearly and more strongly when it is in the same motion as it is in your birth chart. This is true for Jupiter, this is true for Mercury, this is true for Venus, this is true for, and especially as we get to the outer planets, it becomes truer, because at the end of the day, if you have a planet like Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, or Venus retrograde in your birth chart, or Mars retrograde in your birth chart, the fact that for the larger collective, these planets are direct in the larger collective's birth chart means that you're gonna be positively, if you want to use that word, impacted when the planets are direct anyway, because they are facilitating a certain amount of movement for a lot of people around you. So you're going to get sort of pulled into that flow. And it's most of all, I think the retrogrades to really look out for are Mercury retrograde and Jupiter retrograde. If you have those planets retrograde in your birth chart, then you're really likely to feel much more in sync with that planet when that planet is retrograde during the year. Okay, and I've covered Jupiter retrograde previously, and I talk about this whenever Mercury is retrograde. Now, as you know, and if I start to talk about the different ways that Saturn can show up during its transit in a particular part of the chart, we'll be here for a long time. So let me see if I can summarize. As I've mentioned to you before, a Saturn transit Saturn requires us to take matters related to the house that it is transiting, the sign it is transiting, and therefore the house that is inhabited by that sign. So if Pisces is in your first house, Saturn is transiting your first house. If Pisces is in your third house, Saturn is transiting your third house. So wherever Pisces sits in your chart, Saturn is currently transiting that house. And matters related to that house need to be taken seriously and responsibly. Now, Saturn has just started this transit, and I've said this before, I'm really delighted to see Saturn in Pisces. Not that it is one of Saturn's favorite signs, because it's not, but more because the sign of Pisces and the house that has been inhabited by Pisces has really needed a Saturnian energy to counteract the Neptune transit and to counteract the eclipses of release that were going on in 2014, 15, 16 or thereabouts with the Chiron transit. The Pisces part of all of our charts has experienced, as I've mentioned before, certain crisis a leak, even potential deception, threat, fogginess, lack of clarity, lack of open and transparent behavior, our own kind of delusional thinking about certain things, and inability to take action, inability to protect ourselves sometimes, inability to take responsible action. So, kind of that entire part of the chart with the Neptune, it's just cloudy and not being taken seriously in sort of 3D reality terms. And Saturn is very much a planet that wants things taken seriously in 3D reality terms. Cause and effect, karma, that's what cause and effect is, quite simply. What are you doing or not doing, and what will be the results of that? How do you protect or shore up how do you take responsibility for the Pisces part of your chart, the house occupied by Pisces, and how do you responsibly deal with whatever challenges are in that part of the chart for you to deal with? We will start to feel Saturn's energy more and more strongly as we head towards 2025. And I think that whatever pressures Saturn puts on us in this part of the chart, and that's the important word, pressures. Saturn's transit in any part of the chart are notoriously joyless. You cannot kick back and relax in that part of the chart. You cannot take anything easy. You cannot assume that something will come in to help you out. It is, and I use this kind of phrase in my reading, it is a nose to the grindstone energy. Fix it, deal with it, pay attention to what you're doing, do it as responsibly as possible, and do it with an eye of and again, a phrase I use on this channel, what is it? You can either be right or you can be effective. Focus on being effective, focus on responsible behavior. You can be right and take an action that backfires on you. Whereas you can be right and you can take, we were talking about considered action just a few moments ago when I was talking about the Scorpio New Moon, where you can take considered action that actually, the karmic ripples that it creates are more helpful and more thought through and more appropriately thoughtful, and so can provide a better set of results for everybody involved. The joylessness of it, ultimately, again, as I've said, Saturn is interested in making sure that you are safe in a particular part of the chart, and that you are meeting your highest potential, that you can be as successful as possible in that part of the chart. And there are lessons to be learned, and most importantly, self-sabotaging behaviors that need to be confronted. Where do you not take things seriously? Where do you get you in your own way? Procrastination, delusional behavior, a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-confidence. What are the things that prevent us from feeling like we can tackle life's challenges in a particular part of the chart? And Saturn kind of keeps at it, sometimes feeling almost relentless in its ability to do so, to get us to step up and manage and take control of that part of the chart. Now, we have to weigh, depending on the part of the chart we're talking about. It's a very different energy if Saturn is transiting your second house and you have an Aquarius rising, a very different energy to Saturn transiting the fourth house, very different energy from Saturn transiting the 10th house. So it depends very much, because in some cases, the sense of responsibility is, you've also got to be able to distinguish what is yours and what is not yours. Ultimately, whatever it is that you're taking on in any part of the chart or in any house is meant to help you build a strong foundation there for whatever it is that you're trying to create. Whatever success and fulfillment you're trying to create in 3D reality, when you look at what Saturn's transit is trying to get you to manage and handle in a particular part of the chart, you've got to be able to be clear as to what you think the best possible outcome is going to be in that part of the chart. If Saturn is transiting your 10th house and Saturn starts to pile on the responsibilities, part of what Saturn is asking is this the right kind of work? And this is what it means to succeed in this work. And do you really feel equipped to handle it? Are you doing the right kind, or does it start to become unbearable pressure so that you feel like, maybe it's time for me to really start to align with the right kind of work? Similarly, when Saturn is transiting the fourth, it may be saying, are you in the right place? Are you in the right location for this kind of work? Saturn in the second house may mean that you're put through various tests to build a strong financial foundation. And here we come to the final thing I want to say about a Saturn transit, which is it is really trying to help you build a foundation, a really solid, stable foundation on which you can base the next 28 years of your life. So Saturn transits, in some ways, what conventionally a lot of astrologers and a lot of people think they're going to get as a result of a Jupiter transit, you may well get as a result of a Saturn transit ending. That means that as you head towards the end of 2025, if you take on Saturn's challenges and act on them responsibly and keep an eye on those behaviors and patterns that you have that are self-sabotaging and resolve to tackle those and take on the Saturnian charges and clean up and sort out and manage and be clear about what you want in the Pisces part of your chart and how it is actually going to do not take on burdens that are wrong for you, because Saturn is, you're going to be left with this you can be clear about what you want in the Pisces part of the chart and be clear about that it is something that you want and desire and want to build towards, and you do want to take that on as your role in this lifetime, and be clear about how that supports what your overall goals and aims are. Make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to build in the Pisces part of your chart is not going to end up being a burden that distracts you from. Sometimes our wishes and desires are not integrated enough towards what we feel like our overall soul purpose is, and so we can end up committing to playing certain roles in various parts of our chart that, without our knowing it, we just end up spreading ourselves really thin. And then the desire or the freedom or the ability to move in the direction we choose is compromised by things we have committed to or allowed to become commitments for us in other parts of the chart that can become an energy leak, a time leak, a financial leak, an emotional leak. And so part of managing and dealing with the Pisces part of the chart where Saturn is transiting is also being clear about what is our most preferred outcome. Is it something that we're able to handle and manage responsibly and in a karmically pure and correct manner for ourselves and others involved? That doesn't mean that you have to give up on your boundaries. It may actually mean that if whatever it is that you're trying to set up and build and sort out in the Pisces part of the chart, it might actually mean that boundaries need to be fairly and clearly set and effectively set. Again, you don't have to be right and pull out the trident, not literally. Again, sometimes you have to be so careful about what you say on YouTube. Well, boundary setting, it doesn't have to be just fair is fair, appropriate is appropriate, and it can be communicated in different ways, and it can also be communicated lovingly, and things can be massaged into place, and people can be given time to think about different things and what works for them and what doesn't work for them, as opposed to just kind of dealing with boundary setting as if it is a thunderstorm. So where is Pisces in your chart? What house does it occupy? Who sits in it? Because they might prove to be a challenge to you during this Saturn transit. You may be learning, if Saturn is transiting your 7th house, it could be that people you are contracted to may prove to be challenging, but you may also have to confront how you are a challenge in partnership. If Saturn is transiting your 1st house in your Pisces rising, it may actually have to do with you and your boundaries. Whereas if Saturn is transiting the 7th house and you have a Virgo rising, it may have to do with how other people feel like they need to set boundaries towards you. Always a harder pill to swallow sometimes, or a surprising pill to swallow, because we think, of course, that we should be the only ones setting boundaries in our lives and others don't need to set boundaries towards us. But the fact of the matter is it goes both ways. Not only do we need to protect our boundaries, but others may also feel that in our day-to-day interactions with them they're feeling like, I'm not really crazy about how so-and-so or such and such deals with me, so I need to set some boundaries there as well. To start to summarize, given the nature of transits that have been occurring in the Pisces part of the chart, your chart, our charts, at the very least, the crisis that really may have come to a boil in 2016, but was building in 2014, 15 towards 16, the question is, what is the most considered and responsible set of actions that we need to take in that part of the chart to help us manifest our highest potential? We do need to keep an eye on balance, how we perceive others and how others perceive us. Because sometimes the idea of what is our desired outcome in a part of a chart, if we're not entirely in touch with ourselves, if we're not in touch with our shadow side, if we actually don't realize that people have trouble interacting with us and dealing with us, then we might be in for a bit of a rude awakening as Saturn transits the Pisces part of the chart. And that would be very Saturnian, to kind of keep at it until you are able to look at yourself in the mirror and understand how it is that you, as I just said a few minutes ago, self-sabotage yourself. And sometimes that could be how we manage and negotiate ourselves in relationships. How do we speak? What tone do we deploy? Does it seem fair or not? Are we clear in our communications? How do others perceive us? How do others perceive our responsibilities? Do we think it is fair or not? They don't have to be right all the time either. If part of the ways we self-sabotage is by not taking any action towards protecting ourselves, or being too compliant, or being a pleaser fundamentally, or being someone who's always willing to say yes, then that could be where we get sort of hammered by Saturn. And it is this kind of nose to the grindstone quality. It is this kind of feeling like we're somehow being tempered. It is this feeling of somehow like we're being hammered and shit, because the Saturn transits are notoriously, if you are not, part of the reason why I'm doing this is so that you can really think about the Pisces part of your chart and start to proactively engage with Saturn's energy, so that when Saturn really decides to make its, right now, the first 7 degrees of Saturn, unless you have a prominent placement in your natal chart in those first 7 degrees of Pisces, Saturn is warming up. And what will make the Saturn transit challenging is if we are dealing with the Pisces part of our chart unconsciously, which means that we're not really dealing with it at all. So how can we consciously determine what is it that we want to see built? What beautiful, solid foundation do we want to see built in the Pisces part of our chart? And it would be great if we can roll up our sleeves and start to engage in building it. Some of the actions we take might feel a little bit more behind the scenes, a little bit more personal to us. Again, it depends. And always with an eye towards what is it that we're doing that is self-sabotaging in that part of the chart? What is it that created the crisis of 2014, 15, 16? What are the lessons? What do we need to protect? Where do we need to step up to the plate? Where can we mitigate some of the lack of clarity? Where can we put an end to some of the gaslighting behaviors and the deception that may have been going on in that part of the chart? Where do we draw the line? Where do we keep an eye towards how it is that others may have certain goals and they may perceive us as an obstacle? What is it? What is it that we need to do to build this solid foundation and to tackle these crises that we've been dealing with, and to really feel like we have, by the end of 2025, put something in place that we can and we will have to live with? Not every, under Saturn's guise, not everything that is done, it might reach, because Saturn presents karmic results. So if we have done something previously that is bound to have a certain consequence, our ability to deal with and tackle it is going to go some ways in mitigating a totally negative outcome. And I realize that that sounds really vague, but that could be any number of things. It can be as serious as theft and fraud, or it can be a little less serious, whatever. Saturn I've seen Saturn deliver results of all kinds, So what do you want to build in the Pisces part of your chart? What do you want to mitigate? What do you want to sort out? What do you want to solve? What do you want to tackle? And it could be that these dates that I mentioned, June the 17th of this year, November the 4th of this year, as Saturn went retrograde, Saturn went direct. And depending on whether Saturn is retrograde or direct in your birth chart, so the phase when Saturn was direct, was retrograde, might have delivered hints, messages, progress, challenges that we really should not ignore. And that may be an invitation for us to roll up our sleeves and step up to the plate and start to manage and tackle the Pisces part of the chart. If you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, it could be that something came up around November the 4th that you need to sit up and start to pay some attention to. And you need to think about, do I need to take some action here? Or what is my philosophy towards this particular issue or this particular topic in the Pisces part of the chart? And am I going to tackle it, and am I going to implement what I need to implement, or am I going to deal with the consequences of not taking action around it? Saturn requires, as I said, conscious thought towards cause and effect, because it will deliver the effect to whatever action or inaction that you take. So important. Now, if you're ignoring, and because I said this is about 3D reality, and those of us who dabble in the esoteric are notoriously not 3D friendly. If you've been ignoring notices and responsibilities and how to tackle issues related to a certain part of the chart, then the Saturn transit may well bring home those pigeons to, they may start to deliver something. It may become unavoidable. And if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, a lot of that may happen while Saturn is retrograde in its transit, or when Saturn is turning direct. And that's why I wanted to do this video around November the 4th. If Saturn is direct in your birth chart, you may feel like there's more restrictive, nose to the grindstone, start to take care of these, start to develop what your, and the reason why right now I'm talking about your approach is because Saturn is still within those first 10 odd degrees of Pisces. The more we get into 2024 and 2025, the more we're going to have to, there's no question about it, tackle the Pisces part of the chart and rise up to and rise up to the bar and rise up to the challenge that Saturn is setting for us there, and welcome the work that needs to be done, as I said, to create that foundation and to create some healing and in a part of the chart that we have been totally befuddled by since 2016, 14, 15, 16. Okay, I hope this is helpful. As I said, Saturn's transits are notoriously joyless, but I think that's a little unfair because Saturn can deliver a kind of foundation and success by the time it is done with a certain part of the chart, as long as we have stepped up to the plate. That is far beyond what we imagine Jupiter will give us. Saturn transit in the second house, if you rise up to the plate, can by the time Saturn is getting done with the transit, the famous Saturn reward at the end of the transit. What do you want that to look like? And how do you feel you need to step up to the plate to build that foundation? That's gonna, and as I said, you may not get that foundation completely. There may be certain things karmically that have already been set in motion, but you may be able to manage. Your engagement, your considered engagement towards what it is that you want to build, which may mean making choices around what you're going to let go of, what you're going to release, what you're going to be comfortable losing, what you actually want to build, what you want to gain, and taking action towards it and disciplined action towards it. And above all with Saturn, you are going to vanquish behaviors and patterns that are self-defeating. And some of those behaviors and patterns may be your ignoring. Some of them have to do with us not dealing with 3D reality. And you know what I mean by 3D reality, time-space reality, day-to-day engagement with responsibilities, chores, tasks, keeping up with them, being responsible on a day-to-day basis. And not getting overly spiritual about things. This is how much money is coming in. This is how much I spend. If I spend more than I earn, there's this kind of problem. You know, blah, just very real, very tactical, very practical. And our engagement and our ability, and not relying on luck or last minute successes, or no relying on fantasy thinking, but relying on this is how this is how, in terms of cause and effect, kind of completely. It's so funny because in some ways Saturn, which is such an unspiritual planet, is the most spiritual planet of all, because it wants us to embody the spiritual principle of showing up and taking responsible and the best possible action that we can take, and not worrying about the result, not obsessing about the result. Everything that Saturn is interested in is the quality of our intention and the quality of our action. That is all Saturn is interested in. Intention, action. With the philosophy that if the intention and action are the right intention and the right action, and their action is taken effectively and in a way, in the best possible manner, then the results will take care of themselves. And if more challenges are placed in front of you during that process and it doesn't feel like, show up the same way, show up the same way, show up the same way. It is all up to you. It is all up to me under Saturn's influence. I'm not looking to. I can do what I need to spiritually to shore myself up, to strengthen myself internally, to protect myself, but when it comes to the Saturn is the ultimate you create your reality planet. The only thing I will say is that Saturn is relentless and ruthless in while it is transiting a certain part of the chart, demanding that we face what we are not addressing and that we address it. And part of what we're not addressing and why we're not addressing it is looking at those patterns and behaviors that are self-sabotaging. So if Saturn is going over your 6th house and one of the topics is health, for example, then Saturn is going to create challenges and problems so that you are forced to tackle what is, are you seeing the right professionals? Are you raising your hand and identifying the problem? Are you taking the right actions and seeing the right professionals to manage your symptoms? Are you making, in consultation with the right people, the right actions, whether they are affecting, whether there are changes you need to make to your diet, your rest, your self-care, other things that may be causing whatever that issue is? Are you, responsible action in that part of the chart? If Saturn is transiting the 6th and you're finding yourself overburdened with chores and responsibilities in day-to-day work, Saturn may be asking, are you doing the right work? Are you approaching it the right way? Is this the best way to get from point A to point B? Is the best thing that you could be doing for, again, just kind of at it constantly. So, a retrograde Saturn delivering its messages more strongly to you if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, a direct Saturn delivering its messages to you more strongly and demanding more action when Saturn is direct, if Saturn is direct in your birth chart. June 17th, November 4th, And right now, let's just pay attention to November 4th. It's November the 9th. Over the past couple of weeks, over the next few days, what has come up? A bit that you can link to the Pisces part of the chart that makes you sit up and think, there's something here I need to tackle in very real terms. Or at least I've got to determine what it is that I want to build here. Do I want to tackle it? Am I comfortable with not tackling it and taking care of the consequences? It depends on what the nature of the challenge is. If someone is drawing you into some sort of conflict and you're engaged in something, it could be that you decide that there are certain contracts and certain things you want to terminate and get out of. Does that make sense? So Saturn may actually be pointing you to relationships that are not right for you for some reason. And those lessons may really hinge, they may become clearer if Saturn is retrograde in your birth chart while Saturn was retrograde between June and September. They might have been clearer if Saturn is direct in your birth chart between March and June and now starting November 4th. The same degrees of Saturn get worked through February 2024, since March of 2023. So some of the actions are towards taking responsibility, building things, rising up to the challenge. If Saturn is transiting the second house, building a strong financial foundation, income. It could involve a lot of hard work. It could involve, but if it is what it is that you want to do, and if it is the right kind of work and the right kind of income, then Saturn is basically saying, all right, it's time to go for it and build a really strong financial foundation. Are you procrastinating on this? Are you not delivering on this? Are you being effective this way or that way? Let's build it. That could be a hard-working, but ultimately gloriously rewarding transit by the time it's done. And the results could stay with you, and it could be a foundation that stays with you for the next 28 years. If Saturn is going over a part of the chart, the 7th house, the 8th house, that has to do with you looking at relationships and partnerships and contracts that are well set up for you or not so well set up for you. Not everything that Saturn is trying to do is getting you to build something. It might be that Saturn is putting pressures there to say, are you going to effectively deal with this and step up and repair and get this relationship to where it is effective on a day-to-day basis? Or is there something here that needs to be released from it? And releasing from it, you create the space to manifest the right kind of relationship. You are going to have to gauge, this is very, very specific. Where does Pisces sit in your chart? What house does it occupy? Who else sits in that house? What are the topics related to that house? What sort of crisis has been festering there since 2014, 15, 16? And what do you want to build there? And part of what you want to build there includes, what do you want to protect yourself from? What actions do you want to take? And what do you need to release? What sort of house cleaning do you need to do? And what is demanded of us is going to become more and more intense. So it could be that till February, March, April of next year, a lot of the work that we're doing is a little bit more yin. It may involve more of us taking stock of where things are at and starting to engage. But I think the sooner we start to engage with that part of the chart and make sure our ducks are lined in the right way and make sure the horses are set up in the right place so that when the gates open, they're ready to go, so much the better. Otherwise, if we are not prepared and not taking action now, in the middle of 2024, late 2024, and 2025, Saturn may start to present us with challenges and problems that are that much more severe because we have not started to tackle them. So till the middle of 2024, it may be that some of the work that we need to do has a more behind the scenes quality, or has a more preparatory quality. But I would still welcome and work with Saturn's energy, treat it as a relief. As I said, I am really grateful for Saturn's transit in the Pisces part because it opens up some energy to tackle whatever it is that we need to tackle on the Pisces part of the chart. But it does mean that we start to engage with it. It does mean that we, at the very least by now, are thinking about, we've just had the first retrograde in Pisces, Saturn retrograde in Pisces, that we be thinking about, what do I want to create here? What do I want to build? Who do I want to build it with? What do I want the outcome to be? Does it feel right? And is it the right intention and the right direction and the fair? Is there anything I haven't considered? Is there anything that I have done that's going to have a consequence I need to be prepared for? And what do I want to release? What is not working? What does not feel right? And how do I responsibly start to tackle and build this? And if before tackling and building this, I need to do a certain amount of research, or I need to line things up, or I need to prepare, then that too is action. So if as a result of Saturn going over your third house, you decide you're finally going to write that book, for example, or write that play, or write that, I'm making it up, or, start that YouTube channel, or whatever it is, it may be that you're feeling like, well, I'm not quite ready to go, but there's this stuff that I need to do to research this or figure this out or create a plan, or all those are very Saturnian activities, responsible action. And it may be more yin in nature, planning the project, timelines, understanding how YouTube works, understanding when you can start to monetize or not, understanding how Patreon, all these kinds of things, for example. Or if there's a book you want to write, what research you need to do in order to feel prepared to get started, doing the research. So that even if you're not quite putting pen to paper and it's not flowing yet, you're still doing the right work to set yourself up as Saturn is transiting these first 7 degrees of Pisces. Okay, I hope you found this helpful and useful. I hope most of all, that I've reiterated the importance of syncing up with the part of the Saturn transit that syncs up with whether Saturn was direct or retrograde in your chart, and to align your energies. As I said, if Saturn is retrograde in your birth chart, the fact that Saturn is retrograde may not mean that you're going to have it easier because Saturn is retrograde, because that is what you're reading on YouTube and Instagram. Saturn is retrograde, now you're going to integrate things. No, if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, when Saturn goes retrograde, you may have to engage completely and more. And when you may find that you're taking, and when you find that Saturn is throwing these challenges on your plate, saying, are you going to take action? Are you going to take action? Are you going to take action? Take action. And the most recent relevant date that we've had is November the 4th, when Saturn went direct at 0 degrees Pisces. And it will clear the same 7 degrees of Pisces that it has been retrograde in since June the 17th, that it has transited since March 2023 by February of 2024. So as you consider these last 2 weeks, think about whether Saturn has delivered some messages to you related to the Pisces part of the chart with regard to what it is that needs to be tackled and addressed, and what will happen if you do not address it, and how to get into action about it. Effective action, and not rely on something from somewhere to come and help you, because under a Saturn transit, that is not going to happen. It's going to be up to you. And that's what makes Saturn an extraordinarily spiritual planet, because we are, after all, on this planet to take action. Everything, all the spiritual work that we do, is meant to serve us taking the right types of action. And under Neptune's influence in the Pisces part of the chart especially, we may have found it very, very difficult to do so. Traditionally Saturn and Jupiter have supposed to be the planets that are sort of at odds with each other or set up contrasts. I really think that the two planets that are opposed to each other stand for fundamentally different things than Neptune and Saturn. Neptune is the ultimate anti-3D, ultimate not concerned with 3D reality, completely concerned with, renunciatory. And Saturn is absolutely not renunciatory. Saturn is be here now and tackle what you need to tackle and do what you need to do, and stop spending your time looking at YouTube videos. I hope you found this useful. If you did, feel free to share it. As I said, I'm going to start gearing up to do some more videos related to the Scorpio New Moon. I'm still not clear on what the sequence of those is, but be patient with me and I'll get those out, and we'll start to look at, with the Mercury and Sagittarius transit that just started up, we'll look at we'll start to look at some transits that start to impact 2024 as well. Feel free to comment or like the video if you're so inclined. Gives it more circulation on YouTube, I think. And subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon and the wiggly bell on top when you click on the bell icon, so you're notified when I do new videos. And I will be back soon. Thank you.